In a small, forgotten village, nestled among the giant mountains of Nepal, lived a young boy named Ramesh. His world was not one of comfort or ease. It was a world painted with the harsh colors of poverty. Every single day was a battle, honestly, a fight for just one meal. The hunger in his stomach was a constant companion, a gnawing echo that reminded him of what he didn't have. His home, a small hut made of mud and stone, offered little protection from the biting cold of the mountains. He saw his parents work from sunrise to sunset, their hands rough and their faces etched with worry, yet the plate often remained empty. This was his reality, a cycle of hardship that seemed to have no end. He would watch other children from the village, children whose fathers owned a little more land, playing with simple toys and wearing clothes without holes. Ramesh owned nothing but a pair of worn-out slippers and a single set of faded clothes. But he owned something else, something invisible to the naked eye. He owned a dream. It was a tiny spark in the vast darkness of his life. He dreamed of a world where his parents would not have to sleep hungry, a world where he could read books and wear a clean uniform to school. This dream was his secret, his most precious possession, kept safe in the deepest corners of his heart. The village school was a luxury he could barely afford. He would often sit outside the classroom, listening to the teacher's voice, trying to catch fragments of knowledge that floated through the open window. The other children, with their full bellies and neat satchels, would sometimes see him. They didn't see the hunger for knowledge in his eyes. They only saw the poverty that clung to him. Like a second skin, they would point and laugh, their words like sharp stones. "Look at the beggar," they would whisper. "He thinks he can learn." Their laughter was a cruel sound that echoed louder than the hunger in his stomach. Yet Ramesh did not run away. He held on to his dream, even when the world tried to snatch it away. He learned to find joy in the smallest things, a kind word from an elder, the beauty of a wildflower growing by the dusty path, or the stories his grandmother would tell about brave heroes who overcame impossible odds. These small moments were his strength. They were like little drops of water that kept the seed of his dream alive. He knew deep down that his journey had to be different. He understood that his life was a blank page, and only he had the power to write a story of hope on it. One day Ramesh gathered all his courage and walked into the classroom. He stood before the teacher, his small frame trembling, and asked if he could have an old, discarded book. The teacher, a man tired of the village's endless cycle of poverty, looked down at Ramesh with disdain. "A book? What will you do with a book?" he scoffed. "Your hands are meant for a sickle, not a pen. Go help your father in the fields. Education is not for people like you." The entire class erupted in laughter. The sound filled the small room, crushing Ramesh's spirit. It was a public humiliation, a rejection that cut deeper than any physical wound. He walked out of the school that day, not with tears in his eyes, but with a fire. The teacher's words, meant to break him, had done the opposite. They had ignited something within him. Every laugh, every insult, every mocking glance became a piece of wood for this fire. He walked home, the cruel words echoing in his mind, "Not for people like you." He stood in front of his small hut and made a promise to himself. He promised that one day he would prove them all wrong. He would show them what people like him were truly capable of. This was not a desire for revenge. It was a deep, burning need to change his destiny. That moment became the turning point of his life. The rejection was no longer a source of pain. It was his greatest motivation. The insults were no longer just words, they were fuel. He realized that the world would always try to define him by his circumstances, by his poverty, by his background. He decided he would not accept their definition. He would create his own. He started collecting scraps of paper and bits of charcoal to practice writing the letters he had seen. He would follow the village elders who could read, begging them to teach him just one new word each day. His hunger for food was slowly being replaced by a greater hunger, the hunger for knowledge. He understood a simple but powerful truth. Their opinions did not have to become his reality. Their laughter could not stop him if he refused to listen. Their doubts could not hold him back if he believed in himself. This newfound determination was his shield. Whenever he felt tired or hopeless, he would remember the teacher's face, the sound of the laughter, and the sting of those words. The memory would reignite the fire, pushing him to work harder, to study longer, and to dream bigger. The world had tried to bury him, but they didn't know he was a seed. With a heavy heart but a resolute spirit, Ramesh made the difficult decision to leave his village. He knew that the small pond of his village would never allow him to grow into the big fish he aspired to be. With a few rupees borrowed from a kind neighbor and a small bundle of clothes, he boarded a rickety bus to Kathmandu. The city was a roaring beast, a concrete jungle of noise, lights, and millions of strangers. It was overwhelming and honestly a bit terrifying for a boy who had only known the quiet rhythm of the mountains. He had no family, no friends, and no place to call home. He was completely and utterly alone. His first job was as a dishwasher in a small, greasy roadside restaurant. The work was brutal. For more than 12 hours a day, he would stand over a sink, his hands raw from the harsh soap and hot water, scrubbing away at an endless pile of dirty dishes. He earned just enough to rent a tiny windowless room and to eat one simple meal a day. The city was as unforgiving as the village had been, but in a different way. Here, no one mocked him. No one even noticed him. He was invisible, just another face in the massive crowd, struggling to survive. But Ramesh's purpose was not just to survive, it was to succeed. After his exhausting shift at the restaurant, when his body screamed for rest, his mind would come alive. He would walk to a nearby street lamp, the only source of free light he could find, and open his second-hand books. He would study for hours, the city's noise fading into the background as he immersed himself in the world of history, mathematics, and science. Sleep was a luxury he could not afford. His companions were his books, his determination, and the silent, sleeping city around him. He saved every single rupee he could. He stopped buying tea. He walked for miles to save on bus fare, and he ate the cheapest food he could find. He used this saved money to buy more books and to enroll in a small coaching center for government service exams. The other students came from well-to-do families, dressed in clean clothes, and spoke with confidence. Ramesh, with his tired eyes and calloused hands, felt like an outsider all over again. But this time, he did not let it affect him. He had a heart of steel, forged in the fires of rejection and hardened by the struggles of the city. He was there for one reason only: to learn. The day of the Public Service Commission exam results was the day Ramesh's entire universe was set to change. He stood in front of the notice board, his heart pounding like a drum against his ribs. His hands were trembling as he scanned the long list of names, a sea of ink on a white sheet of paper. He searched for his name, his hope dwindling with every passing second. And then he saw it, Ramesh, his name. It was there, printed in bold, undeniable letters. He had not just passed, he had secured a high rank. In that one moment, the weight of years of struggle lifted from his shoulders. Tears streamed down his face, not of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated joy. His success sent ripples back to his village. The news traveled faster than the wind, carried over the mountains and through the valleys. The same people who had once mocked him, the same neighbors who had whispered about the poor boy with impossible dreams, were now speaking his name with a newfound respect. The teacher who had told him his hands were meant for a sickle was now boasting to everyone that he had once taught the great Ramesh. The world's perception of him had changed overnight. He was no longer the poor boy from the village, he was Officer Ramesh. When he returned to his village for the first time as a government officer, the reception was overwhelming. The entire village had gathered to welcome him. There were garlands of marigolds, music and cheers. People who had never looked him in the eye now came forward to shake his hand. Their faces filled with admiration. They saw him not just as a success story, but as a symbol of hope. They saw that it was possible to break the chains of poverty, to rise above one's circumstances, and to rewrite one's destiny. His success was not just his own, it had become the village's pride. Ramesh, however, remained unchanged at his core. He was humble and grateful. He looked at the faces in the crowd and saw not just admirers, but reflections of his past self. He saw the same hunger, the same struggles, and the same hidden dreams in the eyes of the village's children. He knew his journey was not over. In fact, a new chapter had just begun. His success had given him a platform, a voice, and the power to make a real difference. He was no longer just dreaming of a better world for himself. He now had the ability to build it for others. Ramesh did not forget his roots. He did not forget the echoes of an empty stomach or the sting of insults. He used his position and his first salary not to buy a fancy house or a car, but to invest in the very place that had once rejected him. His first project was to rebuild the village school. He built a new sturdy building with bright airy classrooms, a small library filled with books and a playground for the children. He hired dedicated teachers and ensured that every single child, regardless of their family's wealth, had a uniform, books and a seat in the classroom. He made sure no child would ever be turned away like he was. He didn't just build a structure of bricks and mortar. He built a temple of dreams. He would often visit the school and sit with the children, telling them his story. He told them about his struggles, his journey to the city, and the nights he spent studying under a street lamp. He didn't present himself as a hero, but as an ordinary person who refused to give up. "Your current situation is not your final destination," he would tell them, his voice filled with emotion. "The insults of others are just noise. The only voice that matters is the one inside you that says, 'I can.'" His work transformed the village. With education came awareness, and with awareness came progress. Inspired by his journey, the young people of the village started to believe in themselves. They saw that hard work and perseverance were not futile exercises, but powerful tools that could shape their future. The village that was once trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair began to throb with a new energy, a new hope. Ramesh had planted seeds of hope in the old, tired soil of his village, and now a forest of aspirations was beginning to grow. Ramesh's story became a legend, a message of hope not just for his village, but for countless students and young people across the nation. It proved a simple but profound truth. It does not matter where you come from. What matters is where you want to go. It showed that rejection can be the most powerful fuel, and belief can be the most unshakable foundation. Ramesh's journey from a poor, mocked boy to a respected officer who uplifted his entire community is a testament to the fact that one person with enough courage and an unbreakable will can create a legacy that inspires generations.